bombshell testimony from military officers. They say UFOs are real and they are a threat to national security.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Creatures of the night, be prepared to witness the weird, unknown, and extraterrestrial. There's no need for roads where we're going. It's the Drunk Turkey Show.
Real life forms. Researchers at Harvard speculate that an unidentified technologically advanced population could be secretly living among humans on Earth.
Oh, you think darkness is your ally? You merely adopted the dark. I was born in it, molded by it. I didn't see the light until I was already a man.
The Garden State might just be a hotspot for Bigfoot sightings.
To infinity and beyond!
Hey, greetings from the year 3000. It still sucks. This is Phil J. Fry, and you're listening to the Drunken Turkey Show. Your one stop for this sort of thing. Hit that button, like and subscribe. You know what to do, just like every other podcast.
My bad, y'all. I forgot to put us into the show.
Yeah, it's okay. I was memorized by the editing, man. Good editing on that one.
Thank you, my man. Thank you. I was watching it too. I forgot to put us in. I hope everybody's having a great night. It's Friday. I hope you all had a great week. Enjoyed, about to have a good weekend. Blue, how was your week, my man? Is this your day off tonight?
Yeah, I'm actually off tonight, but man, I've been catching up on work like always.
Dang. Will you be dropping back anything later on? Oh man, he's getting in trouble, y'all.
Nah, just somebody came in real quick.
I might be drinking a little bit something tonight. It's Friday. It's been a long week at work. I've got nothing to study this weekend for the first time in a minute, and I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good. And I'm feeling so good. We're going to talk about my favorite topic, UFOs, aliens, possible government conspiracies. We're going to bring our friend Jason Truth on UFOs. How you doing, Jason? Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm honored and privileged to be here with you, amazing guys, on a very, very important subject.
Yeah. I have been fascinated by the thoughts of UFOs since I can remember. When I was growing up, Bob Lazar had came out when I was fairly young, and I believed everything he said. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I was probably about 7 years old too, so I'm not sure, there was much I wasn't believing back then. But that's what hooked me into ufology. Where do you come from? How do you get to studying UFOs and things of that nature?
Great question, Daniel, of course. Well, I had an experience. I don't tell very many people this because it's so long ago, but when I was a kid, you could say it was almost an abduction. I was in British Columbia. I used to play a lot of road hockey. So anyway, one day in the morning time, I was in my house. I looked up. As soon as I opened my eyes, it looked like a head was upside down, a bright object. I don't know if it was a flying saucer or what, but definitely this head I saw, and then it lifted itself out and I couldn't see it. And anyway, I don't know if it was real. It seemed real to me that I went to my mother in the kitchen. I said, Mama, I saw an alien or somebody, and she poo-pooed it, thought I was imagining things or something. But I found this weird rock in my backyard the same day or the next day, and it looked like it had minerals or something. And I kept it for about 2 days. I threw it away in my birch bark. It landed. I never found it again. So what that event was, I'm not positive, but I wasn't abducted. I wasn't abducted though.
That's good. That's good. I think Big Blue's been abducted before. Blue, what is your experience with UFOs?
Not much. I've always been interested by them. I've always been a big sci-fi fan. I think one of my favorite movies growing up was like, Alien, Was it Mars Attack? I liked Mars Attack because it was like a spoof, but it was still pretty cool.
Dude, you know what movie terrified me when I was a kid? Because I was a kid still growing up. It was Fire in the Sky. I also believed in that every detail because I was also a child back then. Every detail in that movie. What are your thoughts before we get into the main topic? What are your thoughts on Travis Walton and Fire in the Sky?
You asking me, Daniel?
I am asking you.
Yeah, I believe in his story for the most part. I think he was abducted, but it wasn't ET. I always subscribe, and I like your train of thought in a lot of these areas, Daniel, but I think it was a military, it's been talked about a lot, military abductions. And even with the craft that we'll get into, the different crafts, UFOs, for many, many decades, I truly believe it's black op, secret military spacecraft. We made the breakthroughs. And just with respect, Daniel, I know you believed everything Bob Lazar said, and you were a kid and impressionable. But keep in mind, I think Bob Lazar was a CIA puppet put out there to give, a little bit of truth. But if you listen to him the last several years, the guy's spinning it for ET now, saying some are man-made, some are ET. And then, he's interviewed by George Knapp from the get-go. George Knapp is definitely a CIA asset as well. A lot of journalists are that. But I know I'm getting a little bit off track there.
No, I understand. So you think that the Earth, us, we have not been yet contacted by any beings outside of our planet?
Not from another star system, I don't think. And I hope, I would love to think otherwise, but I always say, let our cosmologists and astronomers do their job. Mm-hmm. They're searching. And I think in our lifetime, I always say, you guys know we're living the most privileged, exciting era, an era of space travel and exploration, the information superhighway, uninhibited, unedited. And I think we'll discover microbial life in our lifetime. That'll be a game changer. But as you alluded to before, Daniel, I think in one of your statements, one of your videos, the distances, I think, are too vast. And again, you don't need the explanation. The CIA will find, you're going to find out in this video, if we talk more about it, they've been spinning the ET narrative for over 50 years because it gives them a little bit of plausible deniability, right? When it's our programs and when they've covered it up all this time. And we deserve truth and transparency because a lot of the missing trillions and billions, but really trillions now, they're going in the military industrial complex for UFO flying programs.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Good.
Okay. I was going to say, what do you think of India surpassing us? They were able to land their spacecraft. I think it was on the
Well,
Mars,
it's fascinating, Blue. India definitely have showing that they have a massive space program. And as I've always said, any researcher will tell you, this is trans-international, right? China, Russia, India, as you say, they have massive space programs. But again, you're only getting a sliver of what they're doing publicly, right? The United States is ahead of the game, your country, when it comes to UFOs. Russia's right there close, and China. But the United States, I believe, when it comes to UFOs, are a little bit still number one. And later I can explain this photograph that sort of proves it.
So you mentioned about 50 years ago or over 50 years ago is when the CIA started doing this. So are we talking about Roswell or is it something earlier than then?
Roswell, I believe there were some crashes before Roswell, but in newspapers and in the supermarkets, right? It's been over 50 years. The CIA would spin it. They would say, oh, it's ET craft. When Michael Schrad and other hardcore researchers will show you, no, it's our programs. And again, it's almost just as interesting to say it's us, right? Because the ingenuity, the amazing breakthroughs, and, I want to give credit to all our armed forces, the Navy, the Army veterans, the Air Force. I have some high-level military friends, and maybe I've worked out with them, and maybe I have a defense contractor or two friends. So I have some connections out there. I'm honored to do it. We got amazing military, and this is the military-industrial complex. The defense contractors, it's very compartmentalized. If you want later, I can get into the wall of secrecy, sort of how that works within the aerospace companies.
Mm-hmm. So the reason to do this is just to kind of, I guess, what's the word? Trick the people into not knowing what the government is doing with their money and weapons and things of that nature.
Well, are you asking me, Sir Daniel?
Yes.
Well, what I find fascinating, to try to answer your question this way, you guys know, I'll ask you a question. Do you guys know that the U.S. Congress is suddenly interested in UFOs? You've heard that, right?
Yeah. That's
Okay.
one of the reasons why I started doubting it.
Yes, I forgot. I heard you say that, Daniel. That's brilliant. But the reason why they're interested, this is the $50 billion question. Why are they interested? Well, I would argue the breakaway civilizations that we have, and I give credit to Dark Journalist, he mentioned this, they got to break back in now to roll out the black budget technology. What Dark Journalist doesn't tell you, we all know we're going to be mining asteroids soon. In our lifetime, it's going to happen, right? We've landed a probe on the nearest asteroid. I don't know what the name of it is, but our universe is infinite with wealth. That asteroid, they say it's not billions, it's not trillions of dollars to be made, it's quadrillions. Now, how do you get there, Daniel and Blue? Do you use rockets like the scumbag Elon Musk with SpaceX? Do you use rockets to get to an asteroid? What's the answer?
Well,
no,
I'm not sure what they got, but I would assume no.
No, you can't get to an asteroid with conventional rockets. And here we are, the Air Force and everybody using liquid nitrogen rockets for the public when we made the gravity breakthroughs in the 1950s. Point being, they got to use the UFO technology to get to asteroids. And I believe, it has to do with all this wealth, again, the minerals on these asteroids. That'll be sold probably on the global commodities market. It's going to allow certain groups to make, trillions of dollars again, if not more. So that's why they need to disclose, I think, one of the reasons, this black budget technology. Now, the government's in a conundrum, guys and audience, because how do they do it when they've covered it up, the technology, for 65 plus years? These are free energy generation propulsion systems, a revolutionary non-plutonium physics, right? When you look into this, how do they disclose it when they've covered it up? And now, I have some righteous anger towards some of these CI puppets like Lazar, so many more, George Knapp, and even David Frere to a certain extent, and the new whistleblower, David Grush, because we're getting, I describe, a sanitized, sagitized, pathetic disclosure. And when you take billions and trillions of dollars, like Catherine Austin Fitts said, you're sacrificing healthcare to build a multiplanetary civilization, because it's happening on the moon and Mars, my friends, that we deserve a lot more truth and transparency. What the hell's going on? I hope you agree.
Yeah, no, I do agree that we definitely deserve some truth and transparency. And, I kind of understand why, I guess, the military would try to hide some of these things. They don't want it to get into the wrong hands and then cause some kind of crazy end of the world type of situation. If Russia all of a sudden had this capability of controlling gravity as well, I mean, they could weaponize it, and then it could be worse than any type of nuclear type of attack.
But you know what, Daniel? If you talk to the defense contractors, some of them, they will tell you, here's the good news, whenever you hear of a threat to the United States, don't worry about it, because we can take care of it. Whoever controls the high ground controls space. I remember you asking the question, Daniel, and it was a great question, and you elaborated. Why do they have military if they have moon bases? Why? What is the reason? Again, whoever controls the high ground controls space. And when I did a podcast years ago, and I told you, Daniel, in a previous conversation, unfortunately, Joe from the Carolinas is no longer he's no longer on YouTube. But he did a Freedom of Information request. I thought you guys might be interested to know. I think it was 1961, and the United States said we can have moon bases for military strategic purposes by 1967. Now, the question is, did they? Publicly, they didn't, right? And everybody's wondering, why haven't we been back to the moon? I keep telling my mother that. And my mom says, we haven't been back to the moon. I said, yes, Mama, no, we have been, but it's covert, and they're mining the moon. I mean, it's tremendous what they're doing.
What's special about the minerals in the moon? What is it made out of that would be mined to spend the money to get out there to do that?
That's a question I wish I knew the answer to, Daniel, because then I could tell people that maybe like you, I don't know if you are playing the stock market, here's such and such amount of money, go into these minerals. I don't know. I know there's titanium and many other minerals on the moon, and you can Google it. It's been talked about. on the asteroids, some of it, I think it's been talked about, but I forget. I mean, I'm sure gold and God knows what else. And gold is used, as you may know, for technology, at times.
Right.
Because when they sent the first Mars, the moon rover, they had to use gold wiring because the other wires would not sustain the cold, that they would frail or something. So they said if anybody ever finds that rover, it's got a couple $100,000 worth of gold in it.
Dang, that might be a reason to go get it.
Well, what's going on Mars, guys, is unbelievable. I mean, again, it's hard to show the actual evidence, but I mean, if you look on videos, if you go on the internet, and that's not all Photoshop, there's literally the black triangle, the TR3B seen in the skies in Mars. There's literally sometimes scientists that have come on, that experts in tunnels. There's tunnels all over Mars. And again, if you're going to have a multiplanetary civilization, we know from ancient civilizations, it's Mars, right? It's always been desirable. And the ancient civilizations had the technology potentially to make it to our nearer celestial bodies, the moon and Mars, right? And that's been talked about forever. And in the Sanskrit texts, I'm sure many of you guys know, remember in India, you got the Vimana, 1,000 years before Christ. They literally had a flying craft that relied on a liquid mercury, for liquid mercury cooling, basically. And in the TR3B, we know from Edgar Fouché, the whistleblower, they're spinning that at about 50,000 revolutions per minute, which creates a superconductive plasma, right? It's pressurized at 250,000 atmospheres. So the information, some of this is out there. It's just a matter, of researching it and getting the public interested why UFOs are so important, right? It's the technology, man. It's free energy. Cars won't need to rely on gas. Why are we using liquid nitrogen rockets for space travel? Again, any researcher will tell you, Blue and Daniel, rockets is dinosaur technology. And that's why one of the many reasons I don't like Elon Musk. He's a government frontman, as Dr. Shiva says. And he's in your country. I mean, he's in Texas, right in your backyard, Daniel. A lot of the billionaires moving to Texas, but I understand why. Texas, a strong constitution, right, guys?
You know it. And you were right. It is our country.
Yeah. Well, Canada, man, we got amazing scientists that made a lot of breakthroughs, even in the 1950s, discussing here in Canada briefly. And again, we got amazing military, I think, that's underestimated, especially our special forces, etc. So we're doing a lot of breakthroughs and great work as well. But again, and our Justin Trudeau, our prime minister, did you see the news report months ago? He claims that he gave the shoot down order for a UFO in the Yukon territories. He doesn't have the power to give that order. He's a goon. And of course, we never saw any of the wreckage. Do you know why there's so many shoot downs? And you got the Chinese balloon, by the way, going in U.S. airspace and traveling all over your country. Do you know why?
Why is that?
Well, because they're putting out a narrative. They want to normalize that UFOs are a threat. Any Chinese balloon could never go into U.S. airspace, be shot down right away. But it's a psyop, right, guys? And I think to understand some of the psychological aspect of UFOs, we got to understand what a psyop is. A psyop is when you take selected information and indicators to an audience to affect one's emotions, your value systems, your objective reasoning. And if I may, real quick, guys, to hop on Daniel and Blue, you guys talked about, or Daniel, you brought up David Frere, correct?
In another podcast, yes, I have.
Yes, that was a psyop, I would argue. I think it's clear cut. It was a psyop conducted by the Black Ops. Again, a very compartmentalized top secret within the military, the U.S. military. They're conducting a psyop, ironically, on their own military. The regular, so-called regular guys like David Frere, but he would have got debriefed eventually. And then they put him out in the public. And you saw him at the U.S. Congress. He was one of the guys that talked, right? He brings up all the uncertainty. Who's piloting them? We don't know, but we've never seen this performance before. Well, he's right. The performance is off the scale, right? It's amazing. They can turn right angles, thousands of miles an hour, instant acceleration, just like they talked about with the gravity research. Totally revolutionary non-Platonian physics. But this David Frere, he doesn't go further than that. He doesn't tell you the cover-up's been going on 65 years, that it's our programs, that it's very compartmentalized. None of that. It's a lot of misinformation, disinformation, bullshit.
Right, but if the United States is very compartmentalized, and it's a need to know. I don't know if he'd actually know, you know, and
Well, nah, he would know that Russia and China, Daniel, you almost alluded to it. Russia and China, they wouldn't be flying their craft in U.S. airspace. They'd be shot down. But you also said that, you think it was us, our craft, because they weren't weaponized. You said that in your previous video, right, the other day. And you're absolutely right. Those drills, there's no weapons. So
Right.
covert military, when you agree, they could conduct a psyop without fear of being fear of reprisal, being shot by their own military. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, exactly. That's why I think whatever it was us. Frere says that he saw something shaped like a cross just underneath the water. That was probably some sort of submarine, some kind of Navy type of thing, and they just don't know what they don't know. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
And so, but we've kind of gone all over the place. let's tangle it back in. You mentioned breakaway gravity, I guess, control. When did that happen, and how do you know this?
Well, I tried to get all this research prepared for you guys today, just to read a few articles, and unfortunately, the screenshots I went to the print shop, man, and but they couldn't do it. The printing was too small. I would need a PDF file or something. But there's literally newspaper articles, guys, and I will eventually get the actual newspaper articles. We can read them amongst ourselves. It's absolutely mind blowing. If you allow me, I could try to read my own shitty writing, hopefully without too much problem, of one of the newspaper articles, if you want to hear it, from the 1950s.
Go ahead.
Okay.
What
sound so enthusiastic.
What
Come on.
newspaper? What newspaper is it from?
This will be Council Bluffs, 11/27/1955. So the 11th month, 1955. Here we go. Conquest or gravity aim top scientists in U.S. One almost fantastic possibility is if gravity could be understood scientifically and negated. It's realized in some relatively impressive manner, it will be possible to build aircraft, Earth satellites, and even spaceships that will move, that will move swiftly into outer space without strain, beyond the pull of gravity, beyond the pull of the gravity field, excuse me. And then they would not wrench themselves away through the brute force of powerful rockets, as we talked about earlier, and through expenditures of expensive chemical fuels. So, you got the Challenger 1986. Those astronauts, the question would be, did they get debriefed on the black budget technology? Probably not. And here they were using liquid nitrogen rockets with 1-point failures with the cylinders and all kinds of attachments to the shuttle, right? Single point failure. If any of that goes wrong, the shuttle could blow up. And we saw what happened. And one other thing, guys, before I forget, I think it's important. Alan McDonald, an astronaut. I know this has nothing to do with the 1950s at the moment, but he was a famous U.S. astronaut, and he died, I think, at 9 years old recently. He didn't sign off on the launch, 1986, and he was being pressured heavily by NASA at the time. But he said, no, the O-rings have never been tested. It was cool temperatures, right? And he said on his deathbed, he said the most important thing is to tell the truth at the right time to the right people to affect change. A lot of these grifters, they tell the truth way after the fact. But there's many more newspaper articles, guys, in the 1950s. It's just I'm sorry that I have troubles reading my own handwriting.
No, it's fine. It's fine. So 1950s is when this happened, or this article speaks of gravity.
Yes.
Where did you go from there? What other kind of projects do we have? I mean, if you can control gravity, can't you control time?
Yes, you can manipulate time. Absolutely. And if you have, as I would describe, if you have an electromagnetic torsion field space-time bubble around a submarine, around spacecraft, as you guys alluded to earlier, in the oceans, because this is happening all over the world, right? then theoretically you can go, or reality, they come out of the oceans, they're tracked on radar going into space, and this is the proof right here, all the way in the rings of Saturn. Do you guys want me to read you this photograph or later?
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Let's. We're on it right now. Let's
You guys
go
are great listeners, by the way, and the audience as well.
Thank you.
Infrared photograph of one of the gigantic cylindrical objects taken by the Hubble in the rings of Saturn. Now, I believe that was 1985. Now, here's the ET spin, though. Be careful, guys. A man named Norman Berggren, I believe it was either Thomas or I think it was Norman Berggren, wrote a book called The Ringmakers of Saturn. My friend Michael Schrad has the book. I don't have it right now. You can't get it, I don't think. And he was a contractor for Lockheed Martin, a scientist, but he claims it's extraterrestrial with no proof. Well, I'll tell you a fact. The Navy is piloting these massive, massive cigar-shaped craft. And if I may just quickly add too, there's a man named Billy Carson. He has forbiddenknowledge.com with over 1 million subscribers, I think, or on and he's on Facebook. Forbiddenknowledge.com. They go to the ancient civilization sort of and bring it up to today. You know, he's worked with European Space Agency, etc. He tells you literally we have cigar-shaped craft the size of small cities, and they are staffed by U.S. naval officers, and that's a fact. And the Navy's in charge, guys, largely the UFO file these days, because the Navy's about building a fleet-to-fleet of craft, and our under oceans, of course, as you know, is a great way to hide. And they have the technology, and it is amazing.
Interesting, man. So the Navy's what would the Navy be doing out there, though? Like, what's the purpose of being out there?
That's the $1 trillion question. I think it's potentially a mining operation. This was during the Reagan years. Reagan was building, putting billions of dollars for continuity of government and the infrastructure we know, just like now, for UFOs and underneath our oceans. But I think it's either a mining operation. Actually, that's the only thing I can think of. I Googled the rings, guys, Blue and Daniel, and it's about 98 or 99% rocky material. But then again, rocky material is going to have minerals. And it could be a refueling, but they're all over our galaxies. I mean, it's unbelievable. It really is. They're there. And the measurements, thank you for showing the infrared there, Daniel. The measurements, I don't know if we can trust the measurements that different researchers have said. Norman Berggren said, I think it was between 600 and 1,000 miles. But again, we know if you look at it, they're building cigar-shaped craft at least the size of small cities. And if you can build, I believe, I heard one researcher say that they're building submarines in parts, right? And who knows, they may have built submarines hundreds of miles long, and it could be a submarine or just one of the many cigar-shaped craft that have been seen worldwide, But the ones that are really big, guys, they come out of the oceans at nighttime, so you don't see them until they're in space. Imagine if that was covered on CNN or Fox News.
Right. So, my thought to this, though, is if that is some sort of large object that our government has created or whatever, I don't know. I mean, where would they build this at? They'd probably have to build it in space, something that large.
Potentially. I mean, we have massive space stations. Again, I'm sure they're building on the moon, things like that, and the distances. You just go to the moon, to the Mars, and then Saturn. But there's massive infrastructure right there in your backyard, almost, Daniel and Blue, all over the United States, underground, under ocean facilities. And this was started, research shows you, in the 1930s or 1950s, somewhere around there.
You said this was photographed when?
No, I meant the under ocean facilities I was referring to were being built in the 1950s. Even the great Catherine Austin Fitts, the financial expert that worked for Housing and Urban Development under George W. Bush, also known as HUD, she said once that if you look at the elevator stocks the last 50 years, they're not mining gold, silver, base metals. They're mining under ocean facilities. And artists showed you in the 1940s or the 1950s what they were going to accomplish underneath the oceans. So the military figured it all out. Let's give them credit. And but we deserve truth, because a lot of billions and trillions are being deciphered And another video, maybe we could even go into the human trafficking aspect and drug running. And are they using military UFOs for some of that too? It's pretty wild, I know.
Yeah, that's kind of wild. So going back to I guess this image here. Let's continue with this image here. You think that this is the U.S. Navy that is out there in the rings of Saturn? And there's not really a reason why yet, but if they were out there and it was planned, why would they release this picture from the Hubble?
Well, because, Daniel, I think because Norman spun it for extraterrestrial, right? He didn't say that it was us. He wouldn't admit that it's the U.S. Navy that's all the way out in the rings of Saturn, probably to Jupiter. They are all over a galaxy, massive space fleets, I believe, right? But he wouldn't admit that. He lied and said it was extraterrestrial with no proof at all, you know. So that's a great question.
If this thing is propelled by gravity, wouldn't it be difficult to see if it's bending light, even infrared light? Wouldn't it be impossible to see?
That's, again, another excellent question, Daniel. I could only assume that the infrared is so deep. I mean, we could ask some professional photographers, but the infrared goes so much into the deep spectrum. I don't think having a gravitational and magnetic field, etc., would inhibit to be able to see that. But you got to go in the infrared to really, I guess, see it in the rings of Saturn, you know?
Yeah. That's interesting.
And again, if it's not the U.S. Navy, and if Norman Berggren is completely full of shit, I mean, he said it's ET. What is the other explanation? There is no other explanation, right? It's either ET, extraterrestrials that are in our galaxy for whatever reason, the rings of Saturn, or it's our U.S. Navy.
You don't think it'd be like a piece of ring that kind of broke off? I mean, it looks kind of like the same. Because
Daniel, there's sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, buddy. There's other photos with other cigar-shaped craft in the rings of Saturn. I'm pretty sure they've been taking numerous photos of cigar-shaped craft. So I don't think it's not a broken ring. And I'm sure cosmologists and scientists, they would tell you if it was a broken ring, there'd be talk on that. At least I would think so.
Gotcha. That's interesting. I just, from here, it looks very like those two lines that are side by side. Let me get to the picture real quick. Let me pull it back up.
I wonder what the audience thinks of that photograph. See that? See the shape? It's a cigar-shaped craft, just not the huge, massive ones, but they've been seen all over the world. They're one of the more common shaped UFOs. Between, flying saucers is number one, most common. The Nazi bell, or the Nazi craft there, but you call it. But the flying saucers and the black triangles, the TR3B Astra, that is been in vogue since 1980s and up till today. But the cigar-shaped craft is probably second most common shaped UFO. And I believe it's, again, the Navy are inside those suckers, man.
What would be the benefit of the cigar shape?
I don't know. That's a great question, and I hope you and I, Daniel and Blue, can talk about that in the future about the advantages of that cigar shape. Maybe it's I don't know.
The most you get is speed out of the narrowness of the.
No, you're moving with gravity. It don't matter what the shape is.
That's true. Exactly, Daniel. You hit the nail right on the head. If you got, again, an electromagnetic sort of torsion field space-time bubble, I know it's a lot of vernacular. If you got it around it like a school bus, theoretically, you could put that thing in a space, and it's going to go flying. And by the way, guys, Billy Carson tells you this guy's a hardcore space insider. He's worked with European Space Agency. He works on new technologies. He's not read into the programs per se. But he has, some clearances at the Space Symposium every year, he tells you. So he's a hardcore space insider. What was my point about him? Oh, no, now I forget. It'll come to me. Sorry.
No problem. Blue, what do you think this this cigar-shaped object is?
Well, to me, it looks like it's four objects. You see how there's a little gap in between it?
Yeah.
Kind of like, when something's following a line, like, so you can see, like, it's like four little, because it's got a little bit of gap in between each one. So,
When I was looking at it right now, I thought it was something twisting.
like, to me, it could be like a cloud, like a formation of
You
clouds.
guys
Like,
keep staring at this picture, and I might have to keep my promise or change it up. Remember, I told you we'd go to Mars and the TR3B, but maybe we'll go to the rings of Saturn if you're interested.
Let's do it.
yeah,
man.
just because to me it looks like, how they would say in Mars they have the windstorms that are so strong or whatever. What if it's a storm that's like
Guys, I meant.
on the ring?
Oh, sorry, Blue.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, thanks, buddy. No, I meant to say. Oh, now I lost it again. Oh yeah, Billy Carson tells you that they get to Mars. Say if you're leaving from the moon or from Earth, but they choose a certain time every year. I think this makes sense because the gravity and magnetic fields are extra strong. So it's going to repel your craft to Mars that much further. And with a nuclear powered engine, and that's on the back of these TR3B Astras, they can get there in 6 months or less, Billy said. But I believe they're getting there in 2 weeks or less because Alberta Chang, he has the most U.S. space flights or space time in the ever. He tested a plasma engine. I don't know if you guys knew this. I don't know what year he did this. I think fairly recently, maybe a few years ago. He tested a plasma engine so powerful it had to be tested in space, and they publicly said it would cut the duration of astronauts to Mars eventually to 2 weeks. So if they're saying publicly that, maybe they're getting to Mars in 2 weeks or less, but definitely 6 months or less.
Interesting.
Rings of Saturn, I don't know how long it took them, but you see, this is taxpayers' money. These are your hard-earned taxpayers' dollars largely that are going to these craft, and we get all these CIA dirty puppets that I'll love to expose one day, putting out disinformation and misinformation when we deserve, a real authentic disclosure on a lot of this and a lot of the technology. And again, the government's giving us a little bit, you got the Tic Tac video that you like to show, Daniel, but they've got thousands of hours of real gun camera footage that's going to be authentic. It's going to be real. It's going to be up close. And, there's other great video coverage that's out there, but we don't get to see it for TV purposes, right?
Honestly, I do believe there's a lot of video out there we don't see. I've honestly seen the spheres, the light spheres, sit for a second and then just boom, take off and disappear.
I think that it's pretty obvious that the government is up to something when, they started releasing some images that they claim were unidentified flying objects, and they were debunked or identified within a day or two by everyday people just looking at the photo. I think there was one that was like a Batman like balloon or something of that nature, and there was another one where it was another helium type of balloon that a plane flew under. And
wow.
I was just like, you're saying that our government can't figure what these are. These are unidentified, and people who aren't trained or looking at this or any of those things are figuring out what it is within a day or two. That doesn't make any sense to me. That just tells me that obviously they're hiding something or lying. Now, back in the day, I was hoping that they were lying and hiding so that they would think that, the people would think that there are no UFOs. It's obviously, our government to hide the fact that they are. But the longer they've gone about kind of talking about it without disclosing anything, kind of makes me think that there's nothing there. Not yet, at least. And when I think about it, I think there's probably more of a likelihood that if there was some sort of gravity breakaway deal or breakthrough in the future, that gravity breakthrough would probably be a lot more, fine-tuned. Maybe some of these things are visiting us from the future. Do you have any insight or thoughts on these being potential time travelers?
How about you, Blue? What do you think of that?
I think eventually we are going to get to that point where we can, with all the new stuff that's being developed, especially with the what do you call it? I have the name right now. The thing they turned on not too long ago, and everybody thinks we're in a parallel world.
Oh, the Hadron Collider.
Yeah, Hadron Collider.
Yeah.
So eventually we're gonna get there. That thing is powerful. I wonder exactly what information they have of what it's done and what power it emits, and what happens to the people that work around it. Because some of that stuff puts out a lot of radiation. Some of that stuff puts out.
You would think so.
So many like gamma rays and stuff like that it would affect those people living in the area, because it's a big, powerful collider. So,
if I may, can I recommend a book and promote a book from a hardcore space researcher, a friend of mine?
Go ahead.
If I may, thank you. Excellent book for all you UFO enthusiasts out there, called Dark Files by Michael Schratt. He's an aerospace aircraft historian, folks. He's a UFO expert, as I like to qualify or say I am, but this guy's been at it for a long time. He also has a defense contractor, The Odd Contact. Beautiful illustrations in this book of all kinds of UFO encounters from the 1950s. He's got ones from 1940s, your Roswell, the Cash Landrum, I think, incident, and many more, and under ocean crashes or under ocean UFOs coming out of the oceans, I believe, but many, many here on Earth. And by the way, guys, he goes into, especially on interviews, where in the TR-3B, the black triangles, probably flying saucers as well, you'll see tubes, pipes, and cylinders. Always, it's a staple that eyewitnesses will see if they see underneath the craft, if they're so fortunate. Mm-hmm. And that, Michael Schratt asked the question, is that for the liquid nitrogen cooling, a superconductor? And I would argue it is. I mean, if you look at the Nazi Bell, again, a very famous book. You guys may be aware of this one, The Truth About the Wonder Waffle.
Yeah.
Written by Igor Lukowski. You know it, right, Daniel? Amazing history. That hinge-like structure is still there, and it had electrical port cables. You can still see the remnants of that. So they were injecting this project that looked like a bell. It didn't fly, but it levitated. Concentration survivors saw it. We know it's a fact because one of the leading scientists that was later killed, he testified to a committee. There was many scientists that were killed on that project, by the way, 75 scientists or something. But this is, I would argue, one of the primitive anti-gravity breakthroughs inside Nazi Germany. And what my point was, but.
But do you think they're still working on those type of technologies? But
they mastered it. They mastered it, Blue. I mean, it's unbelievable what the military, the ingenuity, the amazing breakthroughs, and we haven't seen hardly any of this from the public unless you do the research.
Like I always was interested by the theory, in Cuba, all the workers at the embassy getting headaches because they were getting sent, those sound waves that are causing, that's a pretty significant kind of, some of them had brain damage and stuff like that.
Pretty dramatic. And that could have been, I don't know if you're alluding to this, Blue, that could have been easily from a UFO, theoretically, right, that did that.
And UFO, but I think it could be something somebody mastered somewhere else, and they're hiding in Cuba because we weren't going there.
Well, I figured that incident happened because they didn't want peace relations. Somebody in the deep state didn't want U.S. to have peaceful relations, unfortunately, with Cuba. And, back to UFOs, guys, it's even the 1950s, they stated on some of the craft, the NRO, the NSA, and the CIA were largely in control of it. And I want to add, before I forget, Lockheed Martin has a huge monopoly on a lot of the projects, especially the black triangles. But Boeing, Northrop Grumman, they're all doing super highly classified work. And the wall of secrecy, do you guys want me to tell you really briefly sort of how it works?
Yeah, go ahead.
How they kept this information largely in top secret? Well, often when you're working on these projects, you're in silos. and you're going to have a colonel sitting on top of you, not too far away. And I may have a question. Of course, I might ask you a question, Daniel. I might ask you a question, Blue. You'll write it down for me, but we really won't know what we're working on, even on the same project necessarily. It's that compartmentalized. And you get some disinformation out there where, people often say, or maybe it's naivety as well, they'll say, special access projects, right? You always hear this term, special access projects. Well, guess what? More highly classified is called unacknowledged special access projects, where if you even disclose that you're working on that project, you will be jailed 30 years or more and or killed. It's that compartmentalized. You know?
I believe it. I believe it. Serious Black comes in with a $5 super chat, says, I find this topic fascinating. Thanks for expanding our minds. Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right.
And Mikey gifted 1 Drunk Turkey Show membership. Guys, we're going to be doing a live show, members only, this Sunday. And then I think Monday I'll be dropping, it's, I might drop it early for the members, perhaps that's what's going to happen this week. We'll figure it out. But tomorrow I'm going to be interviewing Howard Bloom once again. I've now finished the book. I've gone through it. I have several questions, so make sure you guys tune in for that. Hit that like and subscribe button, ring that notification bell, and if you want to become a member, hit the join button. If you're on Apple, go to the description. It says become a member, hit the link, and it'll take you straight there. So you brought up an interesting book. I know about another interesting book, and I kind of want to get your idea on this topic, and it's called Chariots of the Gods. And in this book, it kind of references ancient aliens and UFOs back in the day. How would you explain those type of events if they were flying machines back in those times, if we weren't, this technology wasn't around then?
It's fascinating history, obviously, fascinating question and deep thought. I don't have the answers, but I would speculate that very ancient civilizations, as the book alludes to, were seeing numerous anomalies in space, time, or in our skies, whether it be an asteroid or what have you. Maybe they thought they saw flying machines. Maybe, just maybe, there was some sort of extraterrestrial race back then that was able to fly in our skies. I don't know the answer. It would be pure speculation. I don't think there was an ET. I just can't comprehend another ET race from another star system. We're still trying to figure out, why haven't we seen, the signatures, if they're there, if they're in other galaxies, the Fermi paradox, right, Daniel? Why haven't we seen those signatures? And we could get into a whole video on that. They're getting more and more ideas of why possibly, civilization could have burned itself out, many, many other factors. And it's pretty fascinating. By the way, Daniel, before I forget, can I ask you a question right now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. I want to ask you, do you know how classified that UFOs are? Like, did you, let me put it this way. Did you know, and Blue, there he is on camera, did you guys know that the UFO file has always been considered more top secret than the atom bomb? Did you know that?
I did not.
Yes. Even in Nazi Germany, they also rated it more top secret bomb than atom bomb. And they basically alluded to that in the 1950s as well. Again, this is revolutionary non-plutonium physics. Again, reiterating, we're living a remarkable, exciting, privileged era, but we got to go after some of these dirty CIA players, I believe, one day. And just grifters like George Knapp. He hasn't told us hardly any truth. They add disinformation and misinformation all the time and lies. Jeremy Corbell, he's saying it's ET and bringing up the uncertainty, who's piloting, and he's trying to come off, he's like an expert in UFOs. Jeremy Corbell, he's a TV producer. He's just trying to make money, but he won't be honest with you,
Yeah. The one thing I saw that made me kind of just like, all right, this guy lost all his credibility, was when he was trying to pass off those triangles and night vision triangles. It was something that occurs during when you use one of those cameras and you take a picture through a night vision lens, it'll make every light look triangular. And he was trying to pass those off as triangular shaped UFOs in the sky. And
Really?
I was like, yeah, I was like, man, and he got debunked right away too. Everybody was debunking him right away. And so, when that happened, that's when I was like, "No, I don't know about that." But I mean, there's more to this ancient alien thing. I mean, there's the Sumerians who wrote and texted, and if the translations are correct, they stated that people came from the sky, created man as a slave race to, search for gold because they needed gold in their home planet. So to speak.
I think some of that is, some of it potentially could be true, Daniel, but let's focus, I would say, let's focus on the real scripts that also say they created the Brahmana, right? Again, 1,000 years before Christ, the Brahmana spacecraft, they have diagrams of it. That's the concrete proof and amazing ingenuity of the ancient civilizations, right? Mm-hmm. They use a liquid mercury. This is the staple. This is the mainstay of a lot of these craft, and scientists to this day using liquid mercury and spinning it, creating a superconductive plasma. And again, it's very complicated, but the ancient civilizations obviously figured something out. And did that allow them to get to the moon? Well, if you research and look circumstantially, it looks like they did. They very well may have. So, and as you say, flying in the heavens, and I don't know if there was, when you mention slave labor, Daniel and Blue, I bring it up to today that even Billy Carson tells you this is hard to comprehend, folks. We could talk more about it maybe another day, but let me just say, on the one side of Mars that you'll never see, there's slave labor to get because if you're doing covert production, right? If you got a multiplanetary civilization on the moon and Mars, which we do, if you look at the evidence, and the military can get there, you're going to use slave labor. You know these guys, particularly CIA times, they're very evil. So again, and it goes back to even human trafficking. I believe it's unbelievable. So when you see Elon Musk, this goof, if he ever makes it to Mars, right? He says he's going to take a one-way trip because he's using his rocket. If he can even make it with his rocket, you'll never see the other side of Mars. Him or somebody else will be chosen, and it'll be a beautiful utopian feel on Mars. Even Billy tells you, right? And then you'll have your 3D printed homes on the hilltops. 3D printing's going on, folks, right? We got 3D printing now for homes here. It's going to be massive production here on Earth soon. But it's already happening in space, man. And again, the military guys, are 30, 50 years ahead. I forget, a famous person also said there even it was an astronaut, actually. I think it was Edgar Cooper, last name Cooper. I can't believe I forget his whole name. He said that they were 100 years ahead. In some cases, I think that might be accurate. But sort of going on.
No, you're fine. So you think that the slaves that are on Mars that have been enslaved are a product of human trafficking?
Yes, and there was a guy on YouTube, Daniel Blue. He worked for the CIA in contracts. He admits it. He's got millions of subscribers. Jay somebody, he's bald. I forget. So he worked in the military. Seems like a nice guy, but there's a lot he's not telling you. But it was a very interesting. He interviewed Michael O'Hara. I think something O'Hara. Anyway, I got it written down. He interviewed this guy who was also former military. He was with a team in Indonesia. He talked about it, guys. They go up a hill. I think they walk down a hill, and in a clearing, hundreds of yards away, what does he see? What do you think he saw? What are we talking about?
Well, UFOs.
Yes. He saw, I think it was a black diamond-like triangle. He mentioned there was some sort of levitation, I think, in the front of the apparatus. He describes it. I think it had legs. I don't think it was levitating off the ground at that point. But he saw huge containers. And he alluded to and basically said human trafficking. He didn't add a lot of descriptives, as you can imagine, on YouTube, but somebody allowed him to actually discuss that briefly. And again, if you have a craft that can go into space, which we do, massive space fleets, Russia and China too. And by the way, guys, we can do a whole video on this. If you look at the military patches, they have triangles on many of the patches, right? Russia and China too, and the space stations, NASA for the crafts.
Yeah.
That's the TR3B, I would argue, for a lot of these craft. And they have many, many other symbols that symbolize technology. And as Michael Schratt says, when you can elucidate, decrypt, or elucidate again symbols in a patch, you start to understand what goes on in a program. So the military, they'll put it right in front of your face, and the defense contractors and the agencies, but they think most people are too dumbed down or they don't care. But I think it's fascinating, all the military patches. So again, that's part of the knowledge base that's out there, and it's just up to us to dig in, right? Like we're doing tonight.
Yeah. So how if there was full transparency and we got to know all these things, how do you think that our world would change if it was publicly known about gravity and the power of gravity and some of the technology that they have, some of the speed that they can travel and things of that nature?
What a question. Is that for me?
Yeah.
All right. I think first and foremost, we're going to have free energy to power up our homes. Tesla was trying to work on things like this, right?
Yeah.
But certainly we're not going to rely on Tesla cars, even though it sounds wonderful from Elon Musk, where the batteries are, slave labor in Congo to get these batteries built, But no, it will revolutionize the world. The cars will be, there's pictures. Catherine Austin Fitz has done in her news report showing you, and other people have done it, what it would look like, in the years to come with free energy. I think NASA even put it out or something, even though they lie a lot, but cars are going to be flying in our skies. This is what's going to be happening in the future. If not for us, for our children, hopefully. But, it needs to happen a lot faster rate. And I wish I could explain further what you just asked, Daniel, but it's going to be amazing. They've covered it up for far too long. And a lot of it was unnecessary, I believe, A lot of it's for greed, right? And, too much secrecy breeds corruption. Look no further than the famous president back in the day, John F. Kennedy. And a lot of people think, he was murdered for God knows what reason. But you know why he was murdered, guys?
I have my theories.
The UFO file. Less than 6 weeks before he was murdered, he demanded from the CIA all the high-risk UFO cases at his desk. And when you study the elites, they want a unipolar model. Catherine Austin Fitz has talked about this. What's a unipolar model, right? You're not sharing power. You're containing power. It's all about secrecy. John F. Kennedy, he had a lot of flaws in his personality. We all have certain flaws. He was reckless, but to his credit, he wanted a multipolar model, right? Joining other nations to go into space. He wanted to join Russia, for example. That was a real threat to these scumbags within the establishment, the deep state and the aerospace companies. And Oswald, you guys really want to have your minds blown again? Oswald, who worked at the coffee company in downtown Texas, remember?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He disappeared. And where all his friends disappeared in the coffee company, they went to work for the aerospace companies. Oswald even said he had a contract. He was going to work for NASA. He was all excited. So there's always this aerospace connection. And who owned the book, the book depository? You talked about Admiral Byrd. It was Admiral Byrd's uncle, one of the Byrds, that owned that depository bookstore. No word of a lie. And you had a lot of the bankers involved back in the day too of UFO fall in some ways,
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Big Blue, how do you think JFK died? I just or what was the reason? I just kind of want to do a little.
It was bad.
Yeah. What do you think, Blue?
The JFK?
Yeah. What was the reason? Do you think it was as simple as what we know from the government, or do you think that because they're still have a lot of stuff covered up, there's more to the story?
I think there was more to the story having to do with him and some of his secrets. He was, who was secretly meeting and stuff like that. So there's also conspiracies that, he wasn't being faithful or something, and the other person was pretty strong, and the other government took him out.
Well, those are good theories. My theory is that he was trying to disband the CIA, mainly because of the there was a project Northwoods, I want to say is what it was called, where they went up to him and said, "Hey, we want to attack a U.S. Cruise ship or whatever, pretend it's Cuban so that we can go to war with Cuba." And he said no, and because of all that, he wanted to disband the CIA and stuff like that. And I think maybe they had some other things to say about
That's
that.
a great theory, Daniel. But the CIA definitely were involved. We could talk for hours on that. They may have used a few mafia gunmen, but the mafia don't have the power to take out a president. Even back then, it was the CIA. But the CIA guys, we got to understand this and our future generations. Sure, there'll be certain good people in the CIA, so they never have to be mad at me. But the Central Intelligence Agency, the mandate of them is to lie, deny, and deceive at the expense of American taxpayers, Canada as well. They're trying to control the world. They got their own Air Force. As you know, they were created to just gather intelligence, to another country, for example. It's gone. They're out of control, and they're in control largely of the UFO file in a lot of ways. And Kennedy wanted that done. John F. Kennedy knew more about the UFO file than any other president because he was friends with Admiral Byrd and some other guys, so he understood how the deep state worked on a lot of levels. So I think he was a threat, I'm sure, as you would agree, to the CIA on a lot of different levels. And it's too bad because the world would be a lot different, but for the better if he wasn't, hideously murdered the way he was. But it is what it is.
Yeah. I find it weird too that she had like the mob out there too. I think, wasn't it like Woody Harrelson? His dad was a mob guy, and he was out there, oddly enough. So interesting stuff. I mean, there's so many rabbit holes when it comes to the JFK thing. Big Blue, you got to get going, right?
Yeah, man, I got to go. And the kids are getting a little feisty. They're getting.
Don't let them bite you. Congratulations.
Yeah. I'm at my girlfriend, so there's 6 kids out there trying to stay calm, and it's been an hour, so they get a little wild up.
Well, you have yourself a good night, Big Blue.
You too, man. I'll see you Sunday.
Good night, Blue.
Good night.
And so, the JFK thing is something that I think that is something that there's so many rabbit holes to go down with it. I wasn't aware that there was a UFO, angle to it. So
yes,
I learned something.
Yes, Daniel, and to you were just remind me, if you don't mind, I'll just add on a little bit on that. Dark Journalist has covered the Kennedy assassination for a long, long time. He's one of the real great researchers out there, covers UFOs in a big way, and other stuff. I don't agree with everything he says, but a lot. If Donald Trump, the CIA came to him and they said, please don't release certain files. Now, this has been how long since the Kennedy assassination? Nobody would be alive, right, to be at risk for the CIA. So it's all nonsense. But that's what the CIA said. They said you can release certain files. So Trump said, okay, what files you want me to keep, I'll hold back, and I'll release other files. Well, the files they didn't release, some of them relate to the aerospace companies because it relates directly to the investigation from who was the lead investigator again in the court hearings? That famous lawyer.
I don't remember his name.
Well, we'll get his name on another video, or the people on the chat page can say it. Sorry, I forget his name. But he found out when he was doing the investigation on the Kennedy assassination, trying to hold these people accountable, that a lot of them worked for the aerospace companies. And he was seeing all these churches, and he couldn't figure it out. And he couldn't figure out exactly this aerospace company connection, but he knew there was a connection. And I think he may have even listed Lockheed Martin as one of the defense contractors. I'm not positive, but certainly he found out there was an aerospace connection. So it's pretty, as you say, it's a deep rabbit hole, man, and it never seems to end. The UFO file is really important subject, and that's why I know I sound pretty serious when I'm talking about it, but it adds a lot of, you can add a lot of humor to the subject, as you've done, Daniel, so well, you and Blue. But I think there's times to also bring a lot of truth and transparency, as we're trying to do tonight, on a lot of these issues when it comes to the UFO file. And I thank you very much so far for allowing me to come on tonight and discuss and try to answer at least the best I can your questions.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm having a great time. Thank you so much for joining us. you know, with if somebody wanted to look into some of these things that you're saying about, the breakaway gravity technology, where would one person go to find those type of things to do this
I
research?
would I would really recommend again, Dark Files with Michael Schratt. Now, that's not going to get into answering directly your question, Daniel, in this book, but it shows a lot of great UFO reports. So more directly answer your question, Michael Schratt, again, does amazing presentations showing you in Nick Cook's book, The Hunt for Zero Point, which was written, I believe, in 2001 or 2004. Nick Cook had a defense contractor friend, I believe, and there was a book in there, and it has newspaper articles. Michael Schratt owns the newspaper articles now, but it has print-offs of the newspaper articles, all the gravity research, again, in those 1950s, Daniel. So anybody who get Nick Cook's book and watch Michael Schratt's presentations, Michael Schratt's on YouTube, you can find out and listen. He will go through all the 1950s newspaper articles, again, that I have written tonight, Daniel. But again, it's so difficult for me to read my own handwriting, and the print shop unfortunately failed me. But it's really amazing.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And they talk about, excuse me, also, Daniel, the universities that were studying gravity research. And one of the newspaper articles mentions the contractors as well, some of them. Sorry, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Is there like any patents that people can look up?
Not that I know of. Another great question. I didn't see any actual patents.
Mm-hmm.
They may be out there, but they're not in those newspaper articles of the gravity research that I'm aware of. Did not see any of that.
Good deal. Good deal. I think that might be something I might try to look into, because there's been some patents that have gone out relative to a lot of things, whether it was gravity or different types of propulsion.
I've seen some of them on the internet.
Yeah, yeah, and I was just wondering if any of those were attached to some of the things that are going on. Are they?
I don't have the money right now, but now I'm not saying you're a wealthy guy. It doesn't require probably a whole lot of money, but maybe you are wealthy. I don't know. But if you go to the Freedom of Information request, if you're curious about more about the moon bases, Daniel, and one of my comments I made that I discussed with Joe from the Carolinas, he found this out. Again, the United States, I believe in 1960 or 61, said we can have moon bases for U.S. military strategic purposes by, I believe they said 1967, just before we actually went to the moon. Pretty amazing, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, that would be amazing. Did they, but when did they do it? When do you think it was done, these bases? Was it done before?
I think they built them probably in those early to mid 1960s. I think more officially inside those covert programs, I think they definitely started before or by 1967, just like they would have stated. I'm sure they would have followed through on that. They had the technology. They were probably going up there almost certainly in the late 1940s, 1950s. I mean, the gravity breakthroughs were made in, just an example, Daniel, 1952, your beautiful country, the United States, the famous UFO flying saucer flyover of Washington Capitol, no less. Do you remember that history?
Yeah, I do. I've heard about that.
Unbelievable. Now, who was that? Was that a secret Nazi group? Whoever the group was, they're showing the rest of the world, we have the technology. We can get away from these jet planes. In Belgium in 1989, 1990, Daniel, Michael Schratt tells you, when those F-16s went after the black triangles, the TR-3Bs, those black triangles, TR-3B, left those F-16s at over 40 Gs in the dust from takeoff. Again, a revolutionary non-Plutonian physics. In the 1950s, Daniel, in these articles, it says there's no G-forces, man, that they'll be able to turn right angles and accelerate thousands of miles an hour within seconds. Now, if they're saying that publicly in newspaper articles, you know they've already done it. And basically, one of the newspaper articles basically even alluded to it. They've already done it. And this was all started largely in modern times, at least, in Nazi Germany, on the laboratory bench with electrogravitics, the Bell Project, etc. Right?
Well, here's the thing, though. I think if I'm unfamiliar with the UFO fly over the Capitol and was actually, I think, over the White House for a brief moment. If it was somebody else, I think they would have won that war. and several to come. They would probably be the leading person or country on the world as far as anything. And so the fact that they haven't taken this power probably means that it is from us, or it's something out of this world. So I think those are the only two options that it could be when it comes to what it was.
Well, Daniel, brilliant from you. When I bring up the Nazis, right? The Nazis worked with the Americans. The Americans got many of the brilliant Nazi scientists. Operation Paperclip, important history. Russia got some as well. And you better believe in NASA, corrupt NASA, where you get only a little bit of truth of what's really going on. But NASA, NASA stands for never a straight answer, right? They say.
Yeah,
but
yes, it is.
Yes, and NASA, you better believe a lot of NASA, we know this, was infiltrated by brilliant Nazi scientists out there. And one of them, I wish I remembered his name. He was in charge of the Apollo moon missions in some ways, Daniel, but he wasn't even a rocket scientist. He was a plasma physicist. Hint, hint. He knew about the UFOs and some of their technologies utilizing this mercury plasma,
So do you think that the rumors or the theories that Hitler had contact with aliens, or there was an alien race that he was trying to imitate, so to speak? You think that's all just misinformation from them as well?
Can you repeat who was trying to imitate?
Well, the aliens apparently, according to lore, were white-skinned, blonde hair, blue eyes.
I've heard that, yeah.
And so he was trying to do that, and that's where he got the basis from all of his technology as well. So, do you think that all those rumors and thoughts that went out there about that is just also some more misinformation, whether it's from Nazi Germany propaganda or even our own, country saying, spreading those rumors so that we think that there are aliens? I don't know. What do you think? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's probably a mixed bag. I think even the military, Daniel, they have, I don't know if you've heard of the black-eyed children. These children, just showing you the technology that they have, right? They come to your door. They speak a monotone, a few sentences. They certainly don't have dynamic personalities, but they're like robots, literally, but very sophisticated robots. So who knows? Maybe some of these white, blue-eyed, tall, so-called alien humanoids could be a military, I don't know, strategic psyop of something. But I'll tell you one thing, Daniel, before I forget tonight, what's really important to understand in all this is Dark Journalist, I got to give him credit. He said this before me, but I was already thinking this. If you think the COVID op was hardcore, wait till you see the fake alien threat op, because it's coming. And that's why, in part, they're saying UFOs are a threat. UFOs are a threat, right? Now the shoot downs, they're trying to normalize shoot downs. It's coming. They've been trying to pull this thing off or prepare for it for what, 65, 70 years now. Werner von Braun warned us. He said the West were going to play three cards, Daniel. He mentioned, they mentioned a meteor threat, or Werner von Braun did. He mentioned the terrorist threat first, then some sort of meteor thing. But the one he told Carol Rosen, she signed an affidavit on his deathbed. The one he was most adamant about that he kept bringing up was the fake alien threat op. And they're not going to be coming from space, though, Daniel. They're going to be coming out of our oceans. And I think that's partly why David Frere came out as one of the CIA puppets, a Navy pilot. And you watch, they're going to come out of the oceans. They're going to try to pull. I don't think they'll be able to pull off like they think, but it should be very fascinating.
Right. And then the goal for that is world without borders type of thing.
A world without borders?
Maybe. Having everybody come together. Because that's what Reagan said, right?
Right.
That if, there was a exponential threat outside of our planet, that the world would come together and there would be no borders and stuff like that. And so, new NWO, New World Order.
Right. Global shutdown. See, I think they only got two choices: either some sort of climate change bullshit, right? where it's a huge racket making money. The climate change is nonsense. Dr. Shiva will tell you that. And the carbon tax scandal we got going on in Canada that I'm fighting against, and we're going to do away with that soon. And the fake alien threat op, you know. But, you know, Daniel, before I forget, Elon Musk. Again, my friend Dr. Shiva exposes him like no tomorrow, and all these scumbags and the Tucker Fucker Carlsons who CIA. You know, Bernie Sanders. Yeah, Tucker Fucker Carlson, man. He said he wanted to be CIA. His father, the Swanson family, we know was CIA, in charge largely of the mythology of the United States, you know, for the disinformation, misinformation. So when Tucker says he wanted to be CIA, of course he's CIA. He's a CIA asset through and through. When you're on Fox News as a mainstream reporter, now he's made out to be this martyr because he got fired from Fox News, right? But he was fired because he was sending text messages internally saying he didn't believe in election fraud, but publicly he said he didn't believe in election fraud, something like that. But anyway, Fox was going to be sued over $1 billion. It was defamation. They had to get rid of Tucker Fucker Carlson. Be careful of these people, Daniel. And once more people understand some of these dirty players, positive change will happen overnight. I'm telling you. And Elon Musk is a government frontman, as Dr. Shiva says, right? All his companies are like this with the government. You can't put up Starlink satellites in the skies unless you're like this with the government. Tesla, why is it profitable? Only in 2020 starting, because otherwise it'd be in the tank, because he got 1.6 billion in regulatory carbon tax credits. So he's behind the global climate change bullshit. He's never invented anything in his life. And he's got a lot of these conservatives now believing that he's all for freedom of speech. He's our new hero, right? They had to get rid of Jack Dorsey on Twitter and bring in Elon Musk. You see how it works? So we got to call these people out and be honest. Elon Musk is not our savior. It's us. Let's depend on us, not these fake heroes. And Bernie Sanders, right, in the United States. Yeah, Dr. Shiva talks about, I'm getting off track here, but he was for the working class, and what did he do? He brought all the working class back in the establishment, never worked a day in his life, wrote exotic novels, gives a big hug to your Hillary Clinton back in the day and said, we got to vote for the lesser of two evils.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You know, that's a lot you were saying there. You know, when it comes to a lot of that.
That was my rant for later.
Yeah. A lot of that kind of delved into quite a bit of a topic that we don't talk here. It's politics, which I try to stay away from, just because, you know, everybody has a different opinion, and about 50% of 50% of people are going to have an opposite one that you have, regardless of what side you're on. In fact, one person told me that in a training. Well, not me. Told the classroom that in a training, that, you know, one thing we don't bring here is, you know, the politics, because 50% of the people are probably going to disagree with you. And so, but I do think that when it comes to, you know, our government and the lies, it's obvious. I mean, we've been lied to here recently, you know, that the competency, the level of competency of our current president. I mean, everybody saw what we've seen at the debate and things of that nature. And our government is lying about that. Or they had been lying about that, saying that he was, you know, he was keen and this, that, and the third. There's been, well, Northwoods, I think that was the other one that's going all the way back to JFK. You know, I wonder if they've done anything else similar to that we don't know about. You know, that is still classified. You know, has our government done anything to those type of things?
Yeah,
there's the possibility of that. You know, so yeah, like I said, I believed in aliens until the government came out and said that they were real, and then at that point is when I said, I don't know about this no more.
Right.
But, you know, it doesn't make any sense, right, that a being could travel across the galaxy or the universe and then get here and crash.
Yeah, why would they? Exactly. I've always said that, right? Other people have said it that have a brain. Why would they crash, man? Come on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand how they could crash. Like, I would assume they'd have some pretty advanced precautionary tools to assist.
Yes. And there have been so many crashes. So are we saying every extraterrestrial race, as you just said, coming from another star system are crashing? And then we needed a reverse engineer ET craft. You know, I understand some people want to get on that bandwagon, but I'm showing you we didn't need ET help, man. we have brilliant scientists. We made the breakthroughs. Now we did reverse engineer, I think, ancient civilizations, some of their breakthroughs with that liquid mercury, as I told you about, right? That's in the prevalent in all these craft now. That was in the Vermana. Oh, you don't need an extraterrestrial. But then again, I said my almost abduction. My friend Davis over here, he came in my place about an hour ago. He didn't hear at the beginning when I said I was almost abducted, potentially. I'm still not sure what that was that appeared in my window. But anyway.
Maybe you were, my man. You might need to go see a hypnotist to figure it out.
Yeah.
Most people don't remember those encounters. But yeah, you know, to travel, and I had this conversation with somebody who had the highest security clearance in the Air Force. And that was one of the things he told me. Was like, hey, do you really think that if somebody's that intelligent and they've created that type of equipment that they're not going to be able to come out here and have already planned for you know, our atmosphere, gravity, electrodes, our actual technology advancement at that point? Like, if we were capable of knocking them down, those type of things, like they would have sent probes and stuff like that first before they would have sent, you know, beings. And you know, what this person told me was like, now if you were flying something that was, you know, experimental, you probably expect some of those to crash if they've never been tested before. And if you don't want anybody to know what you're doing, you know, and if somebody sees something, you might say, oh man, that's an alien craft, we don't know what it is, just to kind of hide the fact that it's out there. And I found that to be very interesting and very logical, to be honest with you. But I don't know, man, there's a lot of there's a lot of stars out there.
It sure is.
And this galaxy or this universe isn't.
Yes, definitely there's life, intelligent life out there. As you know, the statistics show that, I mean, we would be arrogant to think that we're the only life, but this is where you fall. Just take the next step, a lot of them, and the grifters and so forth, and they'll say, oh, so these are ET flying, some of them. Well, no, hold on. You just said that we just said there could be intelligent life, and most likely is elsewhere in the universe. That's a far stretch from saying, as we just talked about, that they're coming from another star system, whether it be experimental or otherwise, and they're crashing some of them. And I mean, come on, like, anyway, that's my thought on that, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree. I find it difficult to believe in those things. I think it'd be more logical to believe in maybe perhaps something from another dimension. I think extra dimensions have been proven mathematically, at least. And then maybe, or perhaps something from the future, or maybe even the distant past. You know, there was like the lost city of Atlantis was rumored to have had technology that we currently can't create yet. So, you know, is it possible that they're visitors from the past? You never know. You know, especially if they've, like, because right now there's a way that you can travel in time, right? You can go forward in time if you travel really, really fast. And if you go about the speed of light or so, or just shy of it, you can travel fast. Like, everybody else will age by the time you get back. You go out a year, come back a year.
Right.
It's probably been like a couple hundred years then. So if they were able to do that, if they were able, you know, some ancient technology was able to do something where they can go somewhere pretty quick and come right back, but yet so many years have come by, I can see something that being more logical possible than another beings from somewhere else that found us. But I do think that there is that possibility, because, you know, our Earth has only been here for 4 billion years, and we have only been on this planet for 250,000 years, and technology has only been around for the last, I mean, maybe 6,000 years if you're talking about tools and you know, hunter gatherers and civilization. And we have come this far, and in fact, if you just look at the last 150 years, the technology that we have come up with has been through the roof. If there was another civilization that maybe perhaps got started, you know, maybe, I don't know, 100,000 years before us, don't you think us human beings in 100,000 years of ability to increase our technology, that we're going to be able to do some things that we can't imagine, possibly even travel distances?
Well, Ben Rich, that was all amazing information there, Daniel. Ben Rich, he was he took over from Kelly Johnson, member of the Skunk Works, now Lockheed Martin, right? Yeah. Ben Rich made some amazing statements at universities where he said, now some of it could have been exaggeration, possibly, but I think a lot of it's probably real, that he said we have the technology, and he was using a metaphor, to take ET home. But we were missing an equation, I believe he said, but we figured it out. And he made some other pretty amazing statements before he died. So he's saying we can get to the stars, which was pretty cool. I don't know how long it would take. He didn't say time frame, but it sounded like it was going to be in the near foreseeable future. So, and then you mentioned Travis Walton earlier, just this changing a little bit directions there, pivoting. Travis Walton, again, that was, I think, an example of a military abduction. And what I saw or didn't see as a little kid, maybe that was a military abduction on me. I like to think I'm so charismatic and playing road hockey in British Columbia with my friends. Maybe the military were watching me and they said, let's do an abduction on this kid. But they didn't, they weren't successful. Anyway.
There you go. Well, I mean, to your knowledge. To your knowledge. There's a lot of, Betty and Barney Hill, right? They went cruising one night and they saw some lights in the sky. Next thing you know, some missing time, and then they go see a hypnotist or a therapist, and they hypnotize him, and he comes back with a crazy story, with some cooperation.
Travis Walton was a cool guy, by the way, from what I heard. Sorry, I interrupted you there, Danny.
No, it's okay. For instance, Betty had apparently drew the star system reticuli and said that this is where they came from, which I'm not even sure was visible from the United States at the time. And I don't know how well she was, an astrologist or any of those things. So I found that to be interesting.
Me too.
I don't know, man. It's a fascinating topic. I want to believe that there are aliens and they're visiting and that we'll one day have this technology that they have, and hopefully it's in my lifetime and I'll be able to witness these things.
But you know what? Again, we are all the way in the rings of Saturn, baby. We're not out of our galaxy per se, but they're flying around massive space fleets all over our galaxy. And there's something to be said about that, right, Daniel? It's amazing, man.
Yeah. If it can be done, I'm not 100% convinced that dot there or that line there is a spacecraft. I'm open to it. You know what I'm saying? Cool. But there was a guy, what was his name? He was a military guy. I can't think of his name, but he said that he talked about the bases on Mars, talked about that there was fighting on Mars, and that there were soldiers and military personnel that had gotten injured and died and things of that nature, that is being withheld from us too. Do you think there's any truth to that?
Probably not, but it's possible. If it's not, it could be another, strategic or tactical psyop by elements of the CIA, the intelligence community. But if it is real, it certainly is interesting. I definitely know in my heart, from my knowledge and research and talking to perhaps some high military friends, let's just say, that and again, you don't even need high military friends to know we got a multi-planetary civilization on Mars. And so the story you just said very well could be true. Who knows?
Yeah. No, he seemed credible. I often wondered, because there was some, him and a couple of other folks that had came out with these stories of fighting aliens. I think one of them, another guy, said that there was some sort of battle at Area 51.
Oh, in the underground bases here on Earth?
Yeah. Against aliens. I was like, maybe there's some sort of top secret program within the military that they're trying to figure out if they can implement something in somebody's brain, some thought. And, how are they going to know that if they think that it's real unless they put something that is way out there?
Right.
See their reaction and see how they act.
I agree. But what I found fascinating on his testimony, Daniel, as you know, he went into a lot about the underground facilities, the underground bases, the structure, right? He built tunnels for a living. And that is real, man. We got so many underground bases here in Canada. You got them in the United States. We got them underneath our oceans. We got them all over the world. And every G7 country, massive underground structures. And just to blow people's mind on the money for a second, Daniel, and we can do whole videos on it. Catherine Austin Fitts, again, Secretary for HUD, Housing and Urban Development. She was the first one to get a hard figure of $21 trillion missing from your U.S. federal government. As much money as that is, that doesn't even include other elements of the federal government. That's only from DOD defense. Now she's estimated we're at $50 trillion at least shifted out of North America, Daniel. And that doesn't include what may have been shifted in the developed world in Europe. This isn't going for just elites in Dubai or, having your oceanfront property or Lamborghini, right? This is for massive, massive infrastructure here on Earth and off world. That's why you got that kind of money, because you need that kind of money. And when you got trillions of dollars missing, you're going to get a bang for your buck as a military, 50 trillion shipped out of North America. Just think about that one. It was 40 trillion a few years ago. When it was at 40 trillion, she said in an interview, Daniel, she said, you put endowment at 5%, that's 2% return a year. You can finance the global government on a private basis. The interviewer laughed at her. She said, no, I'm serious. And she was secretary for HUD. She was seeing the money disappearing and had to try to figure it out over the years, And the CIA tried to set her up several times, but she was too sharp for the CIA. I'll tell you a funny story briefly, and it relates to UFOs, Daniel, with Catherine. She said there was a Navy think tank, and there's several guys. And the one guy kept talking to Catherine. They went out for lunch, and finally he said to her one day, he said, do you want to have lunch with some aliens? To Catherine Austin Fitts, a financial expert. And she took a deep breath. She said, you know what? I think I'll pass. And she knew it was a setup, that if she went to lunch, they would try to spin it for some crazy ET story. And she'd be in the newspaper articles looking at herself. She was imagining, having lunch with some fucking aliens, and her credibility would be shot. But she never fell for it.
Yeah. Yeah. John Doe comes in the comments saying Nikola Tesla said he detected radio messages from Mars, and an old Italian astronomer saw canals on Mars. That's interesting. I know that Nikola Tesla had some thoughts, and it's been often theorized that he had, thought about maybe perhaps having free energy, and that he was suppressed because the more wealthier folks wanted to continue to dabble in things like oil and stuff like that, because if we would have had that free electricity and everything else, then there wouldn't be no need for oil. And so man, we're over the hour and a half mark, and this has been good, dude. I've enjoyed it. I'm gonna show everybody your channel. Are you just on YouTube, or are you
this is going to sound a little convoluted, forgive me everyone. Yes, there it is. I think it's, what does it say? I can't read it from here.
Jason Truth on UFOs.
Yes, thank you. I just added my title. Before it was called Jason Truth. I apologize everybody. There's only one video related so far on UFOs. It's an interview I did with the amazing Michael Schratt, again, aerospace aircraft historian. Check it out. You got my speeches on there during the COVID mandates, but hopefully I'll add a UFO channel. Daniel, you've inspired me and motivated me to hopefully create a new UFO channel. I need some help, folks. Daniel, if you'd be so kind, maybe if you could find the time to help me with a cool intro related to UFOs, aliens, what have you, I'd be very thankful. But if you can, I understand. And TikTok, guys, I'm at Jason Truth Authority. That's Jason Truth Authority, I believe, on TikTok. And I'm on BitChute and Rumble, etc. So
Nice. Make sure you go check him out. Make sure you go and check this podcast out. This interview was very good. I was listening to it earlier today. Very good insight, very good information.
Oh.
And go subscribe. Go let him know that you saw him on the Drunk Turkey Show.
Thank you. Yes, I need subscribers and likes. So far, Daniel, I don't know if anyone knows that the algorithms haven't picked up. It's a very small channel. I won't even get into what happened to my last YouTube channel with more subscribers. I also have a music reaction channel if people are interested. I built up over 2,000 subs very quickly on that one. I haven't done a video in about 2 years, mind you. I don't have the proper equipment, long story, but it's a real fun channel. But UFOs is where it's at, Daniel. And if we keep, be honored if you do want to invite me on in the future. I'm not going to pressure you or anything, but I think we could have a blast and blue and build up engagement. This is where it's at, man. It's the UFO phenomenon, UFO subject, and tantalizing speculation on ET. It never hurts, I guess. But just understand the CIA are always trying to spin it for ET.
It sure does look that way. I mean, here recently with the government, it looks that way.
And I'd love, Daniel, if we could, really important, Daniel, sorry I interrupted you, but the U.S. congressional hearings, if you would ever like to cover that with me, Daniel, I would be privileged to do that with you because I think it's really important and provide a lot of great information for the audience, what's going on in your United States and around the world, but particularly in the U.S. We could discuss the CIA puppets, what they said, what the government's saying, why they created this government office to study UFOs, because they get millions of dollars now on UFO dough, baby, because now they get some of the $1 trillion that goes, $1 trillion or more goes to military industrial complex every year, Daniel. Your Democrats, Republicans, sign off every year, no questions asked, unfortunately. And now they've created the AARO, Anomalous Aerial Resolution Office. So now they get UFO dough. And, the CIA largely tells these congressmen what to do, what to say. So now they're interested in UFOs. But we got to get disclosure somehow. But you and I and others, hardcore researchers, people that care about humanity, we're going to provide a hell of a lot more truth and transparency and a lot faster than these congressmen, I would argue.
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm looking forward to it. Definitely can do something like that. Guys, please make sure you go and check him out. The link is in the description. I put in the live chat his handle, so you guys can just look up the handle. His channel is a little bit smaller, so it is a little bit harder to find. If you just search up the handle or click on the link in the description, it'll take you there. Thank you again, Jason. I appreciate you. Guys, don't forget, I'm going to be interviewing Howard Bloom tomorrow. Now, it's not going to be a live show. I'm going to be recording that, and then I'm going to be dropping the finished product probably on Monday, maybe Sunday. I might be doing something with the members only and kind of disclosing some of the stuff that's in the interview. Maybe not show the interview itself, but talk about the interview. So if you want to be a member, hit that join, and we'll be back again on Sunday.
Thanks very much, Daniel. You're the best.
Thank you, man. You have a good night. Y'all have a good night. Have a safe weekend. We'll see you next time. Peace.